Health Matters on Channels Television. Thank you for joining us. I am Mary Alale Yusuf. It's the season when respiratory diseases hit harder. Asthma is a major non-communicable disease. It often starts in childhood, although it can also develop in adults and affects people of all ages. There is currently no cure, but treatment can help control the symptoms. Inflammation and narrowing of the small airways in the lungs can cause asthma symptoms, which can be any combination of cough, a wheeze, shortness of breath, and a feeling of tightness in the chest. Asthma affected about 262 million people in 2019 and caused about 455,000 deaths. Inhaled medication can control asthma symptoms. Avoiding asthma triggers can also help to reduce symptoms. My guest is Chief Consultant Pulmonologist, National Hospital, Abuja, a fellow of the West African College of Physicians, as well as the American College of Chest Physicians. Dr. Kingsley Osage joins us from our Abuja studio. You're welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Nigerians. I'm glad to be here.
You're so welcome. So we spoke about some of the symptoms being cough, chest tightness, a wheeze, and shortness of breath. Are there other things that characterize asthma apart from those?
Yes, basically, like you said, asthma, we define it as an heterogeneous disease affecting the lungs. And of course, it's characterized by chronic airway inflammation. And typically, an asthmatic will present with those 4 symptoms: breathlessness, chest tightness, wheeze, cough. But to qualify it further, this varies, from time to time, and then also varies in the intensity of the presentation. Of course, it can also present with any other comorbidity that is associated with it, which maybe we'll discuss as we progress. But basically, that's what you see. An asthmatic will present with that. And of course, we will also expect this to be worsened at night. So during the nighttime, you have an asthmatic presenting with these symptoms more. Of course, that is a major thing that distinguishes asthma from other diseases that can also present with wheezing. You can have other diseases that can present with wheezing. We say commonly that in fact, not all that wheezes is asthma. So we have to carefully look at it. Symptomatically, you see that this patient presents, with chest tightness, breathlessness, wheeze, cough, which varies intensity and of course varies time. And of course, these symptoms are worse at night. So most likely we'll think, yes, this is asthma.
Okay.
But of course, we still have to go further to confirm it.
All this inflammation has to make it difficult for this person to breathe, to get oxygen into his body. How does that,
basically.
Yes. So what does that do to the person when, he's not getting enough oxygen in the body?
Okay, basically, when you have chronic inflammation of the airways, the resultant effect is that you have the narrowing of this airway. So the patient is not able to deliver the needed oxygen for metabolism to occur, because you need oxygen to metabolize those things that you're taking. And of course, again, when the airways are narrowed, you cannot even bring out the carbon dioxide that you're supposed to bring out. Dioxide. So apart from you not able to take in oxygen, you are not able to also exhale the needed carbon dioxide. And of course, the inflammation leads to production of a lot of mucus. And this mucus is the one that clogs the airway. Apart from mucus, even the walls of the airways, over time, they become thickened. In fact, those airways has some very tiny muscles. And with repeated inflammation, those muscles become, a bit thickened, and then narrowing that airway further and further until, in fact, when you look at some airways of an asthmatic, the capacity of the airways is so narrow that, in fact, you can barely see through it. That's what happens over time, and that limits the person from getting enough oxygen. And because that is not an effect that the person has to breathe more, that's become breathless, with increased respiratory rate to be able to try and see if you can get more oxygen into the system. But even as you do that, the mucus that is blocked.
Are there risk factors to getting this disease or condition? Yes,
there are recognized risk factors. In fact, there are many. For simplicity's sake, we just maybe divide into host factors. That is the factors that affects the individuals that presents with bronchial asthma. Amongst them, there are many. You have genetic factors. You have some asthmatic present as atopic asthma. So, and of course, those are the type that have a lot of production of IgE. And of course, when they get into contact with allergens, they produce those IgE, and of course that leads to that.
What's IgE?
Then the IgE, immunoglobulin E.
Okay. And how is that significant?
That's what they produce. But of course, let me...
simplify it.
For atopy, for atopy, someone that has atopy will have production of IgE to respond to the encounter with allergens. That's what happens for them. Okay. But that's not the only thing that affects the individual. You also have individual with airway upper responsiveness that can predispose to asthma. Somebody present with those kind of cough, breathlessness, but by the time you do all your screening, you may not be able to find anything that say, okay, this is categorically asthma. But of course, it's airway upper responsiveness, which can later predispose to the patient to frank bronchial asthma. Then in the male factor is there, race factor is also there, the ethnicity is there, and that is for the host. Then the environment plays a lot of role in bronchial asthma. The indoor factors, things like house dust mites, and then, of course, animal danders, cockroaches. Even you can imagine cockroaches has been identified to cause bronchial asthma, yes. And, of course, fungi. Some people live in a house where you have multicolor in their walls. You have moles there. And those are fungi that, of course, when the patient is sleeping, they become aerosolized and the patient breathe them in. Some, of course, animals, when you keep cats and all those in the house, by the time they excrete and defecate here and there, the whole thing becomes aerosolized and can predispose the patient to asthma. But apart from that, you have environmental pollution. Of course, the socioeconomic factors also plays a large... Diet plays another role in that. The family
Diet.
size, of course, if you have a larger family size, you are likely going to live in a crowded place, and of course, get exposed to things that will predispose you, to...
Okay, doctor, please, let me cut in here. You have raised a number of issues. You spoke about race.
Yes.
I'm assuming the black person gets it more.
Yeah, the black is found to be more...
Many people have told me...
with asthma.
Many people have told me that when they've left these shores, to other climes, they don't have attacks anymore. So is that not more of the environment rather than the ethnicity?
Yes, but quite a number of people, when they live, of course, like I said, environment plays a large role too in the presentation of asthma. But even in that climate, in the US or wherever you look at the black population there. By the time you compare them with of course, the incidence is also more amongst the race. So that is, it's not because they are living in Africa, but then they go to the Western world. Yes, they have even those that are native, the black Americans, the colored, they by the time you do the study, you compare them with the whites, you find out that the incidence is actually more,
Okay,
so basically, but of course, what explains that the people that probably have symptoms here, and then they now travel, abroad, and then suddenly the symptoms kind of, most of the time, may not even disappear completely, but just that the what we call exacerbation is not more frequent. It's now less, but it's still there. Because the basic thing, like I said, is chronic airway inflammation is there. So once you start it here, as an asthmatic in Nigeria, maybe you travel, to abroad, and then of course you are not having exacerbation. It doesn't mean that you are free from asthma. Maybe that brings down to, but the chronic inflammation is still ongoing.
It brings me to my next question.
Underline that.
More than once, I've heard of people who don't have symptoms anymore. In fact, they don't have to take the inhaler anymore, and they seem to be fine.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, there's an attack, and it's really bad. Why does that happen?
Yes, thank you for this. You see, the major thing here is the inflammation. Then you now have those bronchospasms, what we call, that happens, I say, the layman say attack, So yes, you may not have those bronchospasms, we call attack, but the inflammation is ongoing. So when somebody doesn't have, exacerbation, or the patient say, oh, I'm free from my asthma is cured, and that could last for maybe 6 months, 1 year, or sometimes even 2 years. They say, oh, my asthma is gone, and suddenly they have, a very severe exacerbation. The reason why the exacerbation is now more severe is because that inflammation has been ongoing, and those changes have been happening inside the lungs without the patient knowing. The patient thinks he's free, but those airway remodeling, we call it airway remodeling, is going. The capacity of the airways are becoming narrow. But the patient doesn't, because the patient probably is not, running, is not doing anything extra, but he's able to just pass all choice and everything is okay, But at the point when the patient gets exposed to an allergen or a trigger, you see that the exacerbation comes and it is worse than what used to happen. It is because of those chronic inflammation. That is why
let me quickly ask you.
Emphasize on treating. Hello?
Sorry about cutting in. I just wanted to ask you.
On modifying the inflammatory process. Hello?
Go ahead.
Emphasize on modifying that process, that inflammatory process. Because if you don't have exacerbation, it doesn't mean that the asthma is gone. Once you have been diagnosed as an asthmatic, you must take your medications. You must observe all the rules that will be given to you. Yes, even though you don't have what we call exacerbation. But the truth about it is, if you probe very deep, you find out that some of them, they tell you, oh, yes, it still comes, but, well, it's not like before, just mild, and I do 1 or 2 things, it goes. Yes. But of course, they just feel like it has gone now, there's nothing like that. But of course, after maybe 2, 3 years, 5 years, you have a very severe attack, and that can be very deadly. That is why we emphasize on.
What does the person now do? What does the person now do? You've not had an attack for a year. You've not had an attack for 2 years. Can you hear me, doctor?
Okay, I can hear you now, but it's faint.
Okay. What does a person now do? He has not had an attack for a year, 2 years. Does he have to keep carrying that inhaler every day in spite of not having an attack? Even if you have not having an attack, because of the inflammatory process that is going on, you must keep using your medication, and you must keep visiting your doctor to assess you. There are objective ways of assessing your control. It is not just enough, I don't really have an attack now, so I'm okay. No, you visit your doctor to assess you, to assess your control. There are asthma control, you can assess it by just maybe answering some basic questions, which we call the asthma control test. You can do that. Then, of course, you can also use
the peak flow meter. Peak flow meter, I'm holding one here, to also monitor your control. These are objectives.
I must cut in again, doctor.
Knowing how controlled your asthma. It's not just assuming that, I don't have attack, so my asthma is gone or is well controlled. And of course,
doctor,
the real test that you should do is spirometry. That's a lung function test.
I do have to cut in now so that we can take a short break, but we'll go back to this when we come back from the break. We're taking a very short break. Please stay with us. We'll be back after a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Health Matters on Channels Television, and we are talking about asthma. You can call 0808-054-2233. If you have questions on asthma, you can also tweet at CTV_Mary A, or send email moalale@channelstv.com. So while we are doing that, let's go back to what the doctor was saying. Dr. Osage, you were holding some instrument before we went on break. Please tell us about that.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. This instrument I'm holding is called the peak flow meter. It comes in different sizes. There's a new one here, which the peak flow meter is like when you are diabetic, you also use a glucometer to measure your blood sugar level. I advise every asthmatic to get this piece of equipment, because it's not that expensive. So, and what you do with it is that when you don't have attack or not, when you're free, kind of, then you do, and so that you get your personal best value. Okay. And of course, the way you hold is very important, because there's the indicator is this red thing that is here. So you hold it to free it, and then there's a mouthpiece which you put here, and you do your best, when you don't have any problem, and you record it. Maybe you do like 3, and you record the best.
Do you blow into it?
And when you now have some challenges, okay, can I blow? Okay, now when you look at it here, the indicator is here, and then you put it in your mouth, take a deep breath, put it in your mouth, and blow. See, for me, I could get up to 650. If you do this 3 times, maybe for somebody you get 400. Don't worry, or 500 or 600, whatever you get. It is your personal best. So when you now have challenges, you do it again, and you now see you do it a percentage of personal best. Of course, if it is above, if it's above maybe 90%, 80% we say is fine. But once it's below 80%, it's not fine. But and of course, if it is below 50%, that means it's severe, and you need to see the hospital, to visit the hospital for proper assessment and treatment. There's another equipment here. This is an example of an inhaler, which I know most of asthmatics, they are familiar with this shape. So most of them, they come in like blue. That one is a ventilator inhaler. Because inhaler technique is very, very important, for an asthmatic. So we will see some asthmatic will come to you, I use it, I use it very well. Oh, I know how to use it. And there's a popular video that they won't, make it, and somebody went to see the doctor and claim, do you think I'm a fool? And I used my inhaler, I did like this,
Wow.
So, but a proper inhaler technique must be acquired by an asthmatic so that you can deliver this much needed medication into your system. You shake it, I am not an asthmatic, you shake it, and then, of course, you open your mouth, let your lip cover the whole of this.
Okay.
So that the drugs will not escape. And then you press, and then you inhale properly. And then thereafter, you remove it from your mouth and close your mouth for about 10 seconds for the air to go into the system and circulate. This technique is very important because it's key. Because you can be using your inhaler for months, for years, and you are not getting results. It could just be simply because you don't know how to use your inhaler. Your inhaler technique is very poor.
Okay, so doctor, there's a question here.
Very, very important.
Thank you. There's a question here. Some people have said that as effective as inhalers are, sometimes they actually don't work. And something more drastic has to be done. Is that true? And what is that more drastic thing?
Yes, thank you very much. There are several reasons that may make an inhaler not to work. I mentioned it. One, the technique, if you're not using it well. But if you're using it very well and it's not working. Two, it could also be that the content of that inhaler is also, that's the medication in there. Because it's not all inhaler does not contain the same medication. The Ventolin has Ventolin inside. This one I'm holding is fortified. It has another group of medication inside. So you may need to see your doctor to look at the inhaler and look at the content inside the inhaler and maybe switch you to another inhaler so that you can get maximum results. So all inhalers are not the same. We must underline it. That may be one of the reasons why the inhaler is not working. Or
yes.
Some people could use they may be using one inhaler for weeks, and they think that the inhaler. Meanwhile, the inhaler is there's no more medication inside, because when they shake it, something is shaking inside. They say, "Oh, it's still there," and they start using, and the inhaler will no longer be working. But of course, if you get your doctor and he prescribe after due assessment, I'll give you proper inhaler, and with a good inhaler technique, you are most likely going to have the required relief.
Don't people sometimes have to have an injection at the hospital?
Can I continue, please?
Yes, but
Hello?
Please answer this question, and you have a very short time. Don't they sometimes have to be hospitalized, given an injection, or put on oxygen or something?
Yes, when you have this what I call exacerbation, and if it is what they call acute severe asthma, that is acute exacerbation, severe exacerbation, that patient must be hospitalized, must be placed on oxygen, and must be placed on what we call inhaled medication, which includes salbutamol and others, to get the patient to respond. For some time, some patient may not respond after doing all that, because after you start your medication, you must monitor this patient every 15 minutes to see, are you winning or not? If you are not winning, you repeat this medication. If the third time you are repeating, you must be getting the ICU prepared, because some of them may have to be taken into the intensive care unit. And then, of course, the oxygen, the respiration will be taken over by the machines, which will now make sure that we get the result. So you have very severe asthma like that, like that. But you mentioned injection aminophylline. Injection aminophylline, for us, is there we still use it, but it's a last resort. But that's what you see in most of the hospitals in downtown and all that. We really reserve it for the last. That is, if we have used everything and it's not working, then injection aminophylline can be deployed. But if you do all the other things very well, your oxygen, your inhaled salbutamol, your hydrocortisone or prednisolone, and of course you monitor your patient very well, most likely most of the patient will respond. And of course,
thank you so much, Doctor.
There are other drugs you can include on the armament, which I believe most of the doctors, they know that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sage. I know from the way this conversation is going, I know there's so much more to cover, and we'll have to do that some other time. But for now, we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming to the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much. I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk to Nigerians.
Thank you also at home or wherever you are watching on your tab or TV. Thank you for tuning in, and let's do it again next week. Have a lovely day. I am Mary Alale Yusuf.